Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today is going to be the first video in a probably a series of videos I'm going to do. Not one back to back, but it's something I'm going to be doing ongoing. Is doing reviews of independent books and movies that I like. If you remember, I did a video a while back on what I call the coming indie revolution. That I think most people are really bored with corporate entertainment, whether it's another movie from Disney, or whether it's music that just sounds like it was written to be in a commercial, or it was just books that are some from one of the big publishing houses in New York, which is usually just a knockoff of Harry Potter or Twilight or something else that's just kind of boring. I think most people are looking for something new and fresh, or maybe even just like a revisit of old styles. I think a lot of millennials and Gen Z, especially like all my clients that I talk to, they have never heard of a lot of the books and movies that I reference, and when they experience them, they really like it because they realize that what they've been exposed to most of their lives is just corporate swill, which is meant to just make somebody in Hollywood or New York a whole lot of money, and it's not really coming from anyone's heart. So what I want to do is start promoting these sort of things, and so today will be my first video talking about a book, and actually kind of an author that I've come to really like, and this is Robert Zoltan. The book I'm talking about is Rogues of Merth by Robert Zoltan. It's really just kind of fun. It's let's see, I got a book right here. So I'll put up the little image. But yeah, this is the book. One of the things that struck me first is the cover art. I'll put a picture up here. Robert Zoltan is also an artist, so he did all the art for the books. And what he's done is, even throughout the book, let me see if I can find a really good piece of art. He has put little pieces of art in here that just kind of capture like the next, so you can see that this is for the Delta of the Damned, which flies play a big part of. And he also did a lot of he did the voiceover for the audiobook, so I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. So the book itself, it is a series of short stories that involve two characters, Dareon and Blue, which I believe he said in another thing was loosely based on him and his brother. Dareon is a sort of a bard. He likes to tell poetry. He's sort of the sly city slicker, likes wine, women, and song, so to speak, kind of lighthearted. I'm pretty sure that's Robert Zoltan. That's him, his alter ego. And then Blue is this tall Indari warrior, kind of like a Conan the Barbarian sort of person, but not really. And the reason why I got his name Blue is that he's covered in all these blue tattoos. And Indari warriors do not give out their names very lightly to anybody else. And so Dareon and others just call them Blue because of the blue tattoos. The first story, which I can't remember the name of. Look at this real quick. Oh yeah, there's a little map in here as well. Very common. I've seen that a lot in books where people put a map of the world, but I haven't seen anybody just put just random, art nameplates and that sort of stuff. And this book is kind of filled with that. So yeah, One Night in Merth, which kind of reminds me of Ilmet in Lankmar, which is a Fritz Leiber story. Yeah, I think that's how you say it, Fritz Leiber, not sure. He's dead, so and it's something similar. It's basically an origin story. We see a little bit of Dareon's origins. We see a little bit of Blue's origins. We get an idea of what their characters are like, and it shows how they meet up and become a partnership and a friendship, and then they go off on their various adventures. Then there's the Hanged Man, Delta of the Damned, as I talked about, and a lot of these just kind of go on as like various sort of adventures, and these are not just sword and sorcery adventures, which they definitely are. The earlier ones are very much so. As he gets a little further on in the stories, Robert Zoltan kind of puts a little more depth behind them, a little more feeling, a little more emotion, a little more mysticism and sort of strangeness that I like. But in general, all the stories are still very light, very fun. It's one of the things I liked about them. They don't get too terribly dark for no apparent reason. There's no gratuitous violence or sex or anything. I would dare to call these like PG-13 type stories. And so they're just a lot more fun and entertaining in that sense. One of the things that I like also they did that's very different is, unlike most collections of short stories, which is just 5 or 6 short stories all put together in one book, he'll have like little interludes between the different stories that will kind of show you how they went from the end of that story to the beginning of the next story. So in many ways, this is almost kind of like a novel. It's just he's shortened down all these sort of unimportant bits. How did they get from point A to point B? Why did they get there? That sort of stuff. It's just sort of like a little fast forward of, by the way, this is how this happens. I'm not sure if that's how he always wrote it, or if he just wrote all these stories together, and then when he wanted to put them together, he just decided to put in these little interludes and that sort of thing. However it works, it works. However he did it, it works. It's very seamless and that sort of thing. But yeah, going back to Fritz Leiber again, I would say that's probably Robert Zoltan's one of his inspirations. That it still has that same kind of strangeness and whimsy. One of the things I like about Robert Zoltan, which I do not like about Fritz, is that Fritz's work gets very bogged down in details and descriptions. I really struggle to get through a lot of his stuff. I don't really like a lot of his writing because a lot of times there's just nothing happening. It's just paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of just stuff. Sometimes just people sit around talking, and what they're saying really isn't even all that interesting. So I'm not that big of a fan of his. But his work was always a little more fun. The adventures weren't quite as deep and dark, although they could be a little bit. But he also liked having the element of the weird. It also probably helps that most of Leiber's stuff, is the Lankmar series, is with Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. So you have that partnership. And in many ways, maybe that's also partly why Rogues of Merth feels like kind of inspired by that, because it's also about two partners who get through life. The other parts that I like about the stories is his writing style. Like I said, it's very fast paced. He gives you just enough details for you to start getting an image of what's going on, what these characters look like, without bogging down the story, without slowing things down, and things just kind of keep moving. So many newer, I would even argue, inexperienced writers want to explain everything. They want to wrap everything else up at the end like a nice little bow and explain who this character is and why this happened and all sort of stuff. And Robert kind of doesn't really do that, especially the later stories. He just kind of throws it out there and lets you decide for yourself what this story is about. And that's one of the things that I like, is I kind of feel like, having read his stories, I have a kind of an idea of what Robert's view on life is maybe like, without being preachy. And that's something else a lot of newer, younger writers do, is they don't know how to get a message across or have a meaning or a moral or be an allegory without it just seeming preachy. Some character, it's usually what I've noticed, is some character in dialogue will just say exactly what they mean, which is really exactly what the author means, which is usually some sort of socio-political statement. And it's just boring. It's one of those. Sometimes their socio-political statement is boring, but a lot of times it's just the way they say it is also boring. Because I don't know. I think some newer writers, they're the social media generation, where you just write out what you think, and that's that, without really kind of letting the reader discover what the writer thinks. It's that sort of show don't tell kind of thing in a different sort of way. And Robert doesn't do that he doesn't get preachy, but you definitely kind of get an idea of like what some of the ideas that he's getting at about bigger ideas, really, not sociopolitical, but life, the universe, everything, how things work, that sort of stuff. So it's very good. It's very well written. Kind of thinking about the layout of the book, I don't remember seeing any typos or misspellings or anything else like that. Maybe they're in there and I just missed them, but in my mind, if I missed them, then that's fine. To me, it's what detracts from the story. If their layout, their grammar, if their spelling is just so bad that I can't really figure out what they mean, what they're trying to say, then I just put the book down. And I just don't even bother anymore. But yeah, the few minor typos and that sort of thing. Because to me, that's the one area where a writer can actually get it wrong. That they can just not do it right. It's just to be unclear, where the reader doesn't really know who's talking, who's saying what's going on, what happened then. It's just completely unclear. Like, to me, I will even ignore plot holes to some degree, unless they're really big ones, if it's a good story. A classic example is The Lord of the Rings. One that's been going around really since the 50s that people have talked about is like, well, if Gandalf was friends of the eagles, why didn't he just have the eagles fly them over, Middle Earth, and then just drop the one ring down the mountainside, down the volcano like a bomber, and then fly back to the Shire for drinks? It all could have been taken care of like in afternoon. And because of that big plot hole, that's been discussed a lot, and I think J.R.R. Tolkien even put out why that happened that way. But didn't see any plot holes in Rogues of Merth. Didn't see any serious misspellings or grammar errors. The one thing, and it's more of annoying because mainly it's so annoying. The only reason why it annoys me is because so much of the rest of the book is good that to have this one thing. But I don't know if you can see it on the screen here. But you notice how like at the top of the page he'll have the title of the book, which is really common, and at this side is where you'd have the author's name. Well, because of printing errors, it's down here, Robert Zoltan, and it's like that on every page. But in my mind, if that is the only problem I can find, then yeah, this book is just fine. Don't worry about it. Again, these are indie publishers, and so indie is generally means one person is doing everything. They're doing all the writing, they're doing all the copy editing, they're doing all the layout, they're doing all the design. In his case, he's also doing all the art, all the poems that kind of go in here as well. And so if a little mistake slips through, who cares? It's indie. If I'm watching a Marvel movie that costs $250 million to make or something, then yeah, I kind of expect it to be damn near perfect. If it's a little independent film made by college students or young adults who just really love this sort of genre and they're just trying to make this movie in their spare time, then I don't care. I think also what's funny is, and a lot of times talking about movies, is that the little independent films are sometimes a little bit better made because I think there's so few people involved. Everybody learns that every aspect of the movie it kind of falls on their shoulders. Whereas when you get the big budget things, it's like, well, it's my job to do this one thing. I don't give a shit about anything else. Think about the scene in Game of Thrones. I think it's the last season where Daenerys is sitting at a table, and right at her left-hand side is a coffee cup. Clear, like Starbucks coffee cup, just sitting out there in the open. No one saw it when they were shooting. No one saw it in post. Then no one saw it in editing. I mean, and it's just a coffee cup. It would have been very easy for them just to have, photoshopped in like a mug or something that would have fit in there. But no one just cared because I think it's such a big sort of thing. And so when indies make mistakes, I tend to let a lot of this stuff slide. Again, unless it's so bad it distracts from the story. But again, if that's the only fault you can find in the book, then the book is just great. You'll have a lot of fun reading it, and you should definitely get it. Also, I would recommend the audiobook because Robert Zoltan apparently is a Renaissance man. It makes me kind of hate him a little bit. He has this great speaking voice. He's obviously some sort of I don't know if he's a professional actor or maybe just a professional voiceover actor. They kind of overlap a lot, so he could do both. But he has this great voice. So when he reads the books, the stories, it's definitely at a professional level, rivaling a lot of other professionally produced audiobooks that are out there, because he is enough of an actor, has enough voice control that he can change his voice. So Dareon sounds different than Blue. The other characters sound different. You can actually kind of imagine what they might look like from the sound of their voice. I think he's also pulled in must be some of his friends, because I believe in the audiobook version of the first story, he has a woman do the female voice. I know in the Blue Lamp, he has a woman do the female voices as well. And so rather than just him modulating his voice to sound more high-pitched, which he does in some cases, some stories, but sometimes he just, pulls in a woman and just has her do the voice, and so it sounds more realistic in that sense. It doesn't pull you out. That's one of the things that I find that's usually difficult with a lot of audiobooks, is they just want to have one reader, just the narrator. And from my experience, at least, it's usually a man, and they just can't pull off the female voices sometimes, and it just kind of sounds a little cringy. It's just enough to kind of like, ooh, I'm not lost in the story anymore. It's just, it just sounds weird. But Robert is great. The audiobook, as far as production quality goes, is up there with any professional audiobook up there. So I definitely recommend getting that. If you don't want to get the book, then get the audiobook. But these are basically sword and sorcery tales. They're fun, they're adventure. They've got a little meaning behind them without beating you on the head. And yeah, basically you should get it. This is definitely an indie author who I think you should follow. He has some other books out there. I've gotten one, I think it's the Long Rescue. I may have added another long or something like that. So I'll probably be reading that one pretty soon. But I'm also trying to pick up another one. I got a free book from another author, and I'm reading through that. And I like his stuff enough, I may pick up the first book in his series. One of the things I like about his work, and I'll probably do a video on this later, but is he's also basing a lot of his stories off of Slavic mythology and culture, which kind of feeds into my latest series on Nadja, the witch warrior, because that's also sort of inspired by Slavic areas. His seems to be a little more historically accurate, whereas mine, I think I'm going off on a little more of a fantasy sort of thing. I'm sort of inspired by Slavic mythology and folklore, whereas I think he's trying to really work it in. Oh yeah, that's probably one of my next ones that I'm gonna look at. Is that book? So anyway, yeah, let me know. Have you read Robert Zoltan's stuff? I will put a link down in the description, so that way you can pick up his book. Like I said, I definitely pick it up. I didn't get the ebook, so I don't know what it looks like. My guess is it looks pretty much like the. Yeah, see, like here's another. That's Robert Zoltan's art. I just kind of opened up to that. It's really good. It's well produced, and like I tend to like hardbacks anyway. Besides, Amazon has already announced that like if you buy something on their store, you're really renting it, meaning they can take it from you anytime that they want. It's buried in their clause. If you own the hard copy, if you can hold it in your hands, that's your book, and you've got it forever. So I'm a big fan of buying the paperbacks. Although, to be honest, I believe most indie writers make more money off of ebooks, so do with that what you will. If you want to throw more money at them, then that's one thing. But me personally, I don't care. Buy whatever in whatever format you want. But anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know if there's any other authors that you like that you think I should be checking out. I particularly like fantasy. I like mainly like sword and sorcery style of fantasy, not high fantasy. I also like noir mysteries. I don't know of many people, noir hard-boiled crime mysteries. I don't know of many indie authors that are writing in that genre, so if you know of some, then please post them, because I'd like to read through that stuff. And anyway, I will talk to you later. Bye.